there's some catastrophic events that I may return to later if you have some questions about them. Eventually, in 1906, began the German-Saur War. It lasted some 40 days. Now, Captain Browning was in charge of the German contingents. As I said, he saw Saur as worthy adversaries, and he expected a fight. Didn't imagine this was any kind of a walkover, and he was correct. On their part, the Saur and von Semblum II may have underestimated the military capacity of the Germans. You see, 2 years before, the Germans had suffered defeats, catastrophic defeats in Sanakam and Manfi, what is now Manu Division. Now the Saur resisted the Germans. The Germans came in great forces. They brought machine guns, which were of course catastrophic. The Saur had only muzzle-loading weapons. They didn't have breech-loading weapons. They had muzzle-loading weapons. These were not very effective against machine guns. The Saur, on their part, understood this war in a different way. They believed that the Germans had been convinced by Enjoyer, the son of the decapitated Helmut, that Enjoyer had convinced the Germans to come and take back his head. The Germans. That's what they thought the point of all this was. Now, this was quite understandable because the Germans made a pincer attack on the Saur. The first company of German-managed troops passed through Fulham, picking up Enjoyer, picking up Bubble auxiliaries. The second company started from Babylon. The idea was one came from the south, one came from the west, and a pincer movement would crush Combo Sweden. After a fierce battle at Wycombe, where the Saur again were excellent in repelling and fighting, losing men, the second company of German troops pushed into the heart of the Saur. They met up with the first company, who were already in Kumbo, clearing through the capital. As the main force of the Saur warriors withdrew to the north, a tactical retreat, expecting to come back and fight once they regrouped. However, the Germans and their Bavarian allies were brutal, killing women and children in hiding in ways that were against all the traditional mores, all the traditional rules of war at the time. In those days you didn't kill women and children. You might take them as slaves, but you certainly didn't slaughter them on the battlefield, not if they were in hiding. Enjoyers, auxiliaries just ran amok through the Saur. They pillaged the palace, and if you go to the Palace Museum in Fulham, you will see a number of items that were taken at the time and now adorn the walls of the Palace Museum in Fulham. That's the way of the world. Von and Saur was forced to take refuge in a forest to the north and west of the main part of Saur, near Port. The Germans discovered his whereabouts and surrounded the forest with fierce battles. Many in Saur were killed, many were captured. Von himself was wounded. He escaped. He managed to pass through the German lines and pass through the German settlement. But he was now under pressure to sue for peace. Semblum was a very brave man. He had sworn and taken an oath earlier that he would never surrender to any enemy. But his councillors Benguero and other lords, talked and convinced him that he must cool the war. councillor, Phi Tam Kum, was sent, came to the Germans' camp, the war was finished. A very few months later, Sembun was summoned to Bamenda. I don't know particularly why, perhaps this was a form of humiliation, I'm not sure. He was not an old man. According to accounts, he was middle-aged. He was corpulent. He wasn't, he was a healthy, typical farmer. He arrived in Bamenda with a fever. He developed a very strong fever. Unfortunately, he died in Bamenda the next day. His corpse, his body was carried back to Kumbo, and 3 days later, Fon Rapiri was installed. Now, let me go forward 6 years to 1912. Just 6 years on. And I should mention that the Germans had only established the fort in Bamenda in 1902. War against them took place 4 years later. The Germans had only reached Fumban in 1902. This was all very recent as far as the Gracias was concerned. But by 1912, Roman Catholic missionaries were sent to this area, and they came by train. They took the train to Nkomsam. And these were the German missionaries, the Society of Priests of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It included 4 priests, Father Lennertz, Father Augustine, Father Mennersdorfer, and Father Johannes Imons, you may have heard of. They went ahead to establish a mission in Kumbo. They were guided by one man called Peter Wame, a native of Babungo, who had been taking religious instruction in Douala with his wife, Elizabeth Yadi, who I suspect was Zop. Now there's a story there that Peter Wame had earlier, some 10 years before, been involved in a barbaric German attack on Kumbo, when a military German captain, Lieutenant Albert, came to the party and did a terrible thing. They burnt the palace down. This was in 1902. There's no reason for them to do this. They had gone in, they'd made their camp in the Mansangai, in the main palace field. They demanded water. One of the carriers, and these carriers were from Bali Yonga and Babungo, went to the sacred spring that only the Fon's water was sacred for. And when the senior councillor saw them bringing this back, he knocked it to the ground in disgust. This was the wrong thing to do. And the German forced the senior councillor to go back, but of course this was in Zinza. He just went, he just left. And at that point, some of the Chindas and Shila in the palace began to remove guns from the palace store of guns. This was interpreted by the Germans at the time as preparation for an attack. But these guns, again, were muzzle loaders. They weren't breech loaders. You couldn't actually use them very quickly or terribly effectively. And it may well be possible that the palace retainers were responding to messages which had been sent from Babungo that this particular force of Germans were brutal and that they should hide their weapons, their spears and their guns, in order not to instigate a conflagration. But Peter Wame, according to his family, and this is a little bit of personal research I've done at Babungo, was part of this group. He was one of the guides. And he had entered, as the palace was burning, he'd entered the Fon's bedchamber and taken an ivory bangle, put it on. Because of this, he'd lost his senses. And afterwards, yes, absolutely. He'd been sent to a hospital, a British hospital in Calabar, and so on. So when the German missionaries wanted him as as a guide. He said, I can't go, for very obvious reasons. Until he'd been baptized and been assured, until he was a man of God, he couldn't return to the soil. Once he'd been baptized into the faith, then he felt confident that he could go back, and he did go back. So, by the 31st of December 1912, this party of German Roman Catholic missionaries reached Kumbo. And in the next 20 months, they began to work in the surrounding areas, going to Lakabum, setting up schools in Kumbo, creating the mission station, and so on. But not 20 months after they'd arrived, on the 3rd of August 1914, the First World War broke out. And by November 1915, British forces had already taken Bamenda, coming in from Nigeria, and were advancing eastwards towards Kumba. One troop of British forces was approaching Kumbo, where there was the mission station with the German missionaries, and a very, very small force of 7 riflemen. That's all the Germans had in Kumbo. Now the German commander, Acting Sergeant Major Bowden, came up with a superb, cunning trick. He wrote a letter which suggested there was a large force of Germans hiding at the mission, waiting to ambush the advancing British forces. The servant, by arrangement, allowed himself to be captured by the British, who read the letter, took the bait, took it for real, and not wanting to engage in a major battle, sidestepped from one, which allowed a small German contingent to escape, to regroup elsewhere, and saved Kumbo from the ravages of war. Now, later on, when the Germans had been defeated, the British came back to Kumbo, and due to the deception of the trick letter, which they realized was a ruse of war by now, they arrested the completely innocent German missionaries as spies.